announced military help from the Western countries. I believe that the roads that Western.
Good day, uh, good night, wherever you listening from. My name is Aito. Today is the 24th of February 2023, and it's the anniversary of the Russian Ukraine conflict. Um, in the Western media, Western sources will say the Russia invasion of Ukraine and Russia. From the Russian sources, they will say a special operation. Now, it's a long story to go into all the details into what started the war, how it started, and how it could be prevented. Could have been prevented. Sorry. So now let's dig into this a little bit now for what is going on right now and this anniversary since the 1 year since the invasion. So this is 1 year mark since I've been following as close as possible because we had limited sources on the media on my side and I show you know on the other side of the wall. But I'm in the Caribbean, so the sources that I get my intels from is from independent journalists and analysts, war analysts that cover the Ukraine and Russia conflict. But I look around on YouTube, I haven't seen anyone from my country, um, you know, made any videos to talk about it. So I think that I should talk a bit about what's going on right now on the ground. And I'm broadcasting here right now from SVG, that's St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and this is my take on what's going on. Now, the situation on the ground in Ukraine at this moment is the main function right now, and the place where they have more of the fighting, where the fighting is taking place mostly right now, is in the Bakhmut area. That area is heavily fortified and by the Ukrainians, and they were preparing for the Russians, coming through that part, and so they were preparing for a long time. So that's why the Russians taking so long to capture that particular area. Now, some of the obstacles that the Russians are facing there is, number one, it's like it's a city, maybe a town, but it have a lot of buildings, like high rise, and it also have trenches and stuff like on the outskirt of the city town. And judging from the map that I see, the map and the sources on YouTube videos. Shout out to Military Summary, also Web Union. Remember, you could look them up today. I believe is some reliable source of how the war is taking place and how the map is moving, the territories that Russia may occupy right now and what Ukraine occupy. So the Russian, judging from the map here, from the source, like Russia already have like, let's say, maybe a third of Ukraine territory, and I think that if this war keep going on, then Russia could capture more territories. They could lose some back, and then they could capture more. This war come down to now manpower and artilleries, and some sources are saying that Ukraine are running out of ammunition, and America won't be won't be able to supply them much longer. But America pledged, President Biden pledged that he will support them as long as it takes. So maybe America have ways to speed up the supply, and maybe have plans how to manufacture more weapons, where they're gonna get more weapons from, in terms of artilleries, to keep Ukraine, um, defending itself, the territories, in that way. So right now the situation in Bakhmut now is looking like the Russian techniques, what they're using is an encirclement, something like what they use in the Mariupol steel plant era. That era, they when they took that era, they make an encirclement. So what the Russians are doing now in Bakhmut is, instead of going all the way in, the Wagner is a real, you know, how we say, they are experienced fighters, the Wagners. Right now they're clearing a lot of grounds and capturing a lot of cities in the um, north side of Bakhmut, and they already have a quarter of Bakhmut, um, that's on the east, and they're attacking now from the north, right? So they are making an encirclement. So what they're trying to do right now is to reach to one of the main road, which is one more road that we believe that Ukraine have to support the supply for to Bakhmut, where the fight the soldiers are that is keeping the Russians from coming in. So if that road is blocked off, then they will not be able to have no more supply reaching to the fighters inside the encirclement. So that's what the Russians are doing. So what the Russians are doing, they're saving themselves more casualties from just barging in, cut the supply. So when you grind with them, they fire out all the artilleries, and then now they have to surrender, otherwise, right? So that's what taking place right now on the ground in Bakhmut. And will Ukraine prevent that from happening? I don't know. It's a possibility. They have a chance, because now Ukraine were preparing to make a serious offense on the Russians, and Russia are planning to make an offense too, because remember Russia have already mobilized 300,000 reserve, and they probably only use 150, and they still have another 150 troops they could send from any direction. So Ukraine are right now in a panicking mood, because they don't know when the Russians gonna launch their offense. And when Ukraine launch their offense on Russia, the Russian might lose some territories, Ukraine might regain some, but it will be heavy losses. And what happening now is that Ukraine already suffering heavy losses from the beginning of the war, like more losses than the Russians. The Russians are facing heavy losses too, but compared to Ukraine, let me say it's a 4 to 10. Every 10 Ukrainian that die is like 3 or maybe 4 Russians, which is still a lot, right? But when I do the adding up, that Ukraine take a lot of heavy losses. And what I'm disappointed with, right, is the collective West and all these big countries and people who living in the countries, right? I know some people have tried to stop this war, and they put out videos to that we find ways to come together and stop the war. But somehow some people just go along like pretend that war is not happening, you know. And we could sit around and play a blame game, blame the Russians and blame the Americans, but by the end of the day, sometimes we gotta start with ourselves. That's why something's happening in the world, because now we don't turn a blind eye. If America keeps sending in more weapons to Ukraine in the name of defending themselves, is yeah, they're defending themselves, but it's causing them a lot of lives. There's ways they could have negotiated, because Russia opened up a gap was to um to start some more talks and dialogue in order to end the war, but under their terms of keeping the territories that they already annexed at this moment. There's a lot of things we could talk and that, but I won't do it on this video because it might be too long to go into about the fighting from 2014, where the war and continue was going on between the Ukrainians and the Ukrainian army and the people of Lugansk and Donetsk area, Donbass area. So that these are the areas that the Russians are basically defending, because what happened now, that area is a lot of Russian speaking people, ethnic Russians, and they claim that the Ukrainians, the Ukrainian government were suppressing them in a way that they, not to use the Russian language and stuff like that. And that's the Russian claim, and not too sure if that's true. Wish to hear more from the Ukrainian side, but to get right back into the war again, Ukraine and Russia should go to the table, and Ukraine could not agree with what Russia want, but they could at least try to ask Russia to, to not to take all the territories that they have right now, but to negotiate back the territories, that some territories back to them. But Russia's objective is to liberate the Russian speaking, ethnic speaking people back into Russia, who what they did a referendum about the other day, which the West, the US and other countries not recognize, and not sure myself if it's legitimate, but to me, I believe the US should have involved in that too, and sending inspectors, and the world, the UN should come and send an inspector to make sure that this that they have a fair election, and what they decide, if they want to stay with Russia or they want to go be a part of Ukraine. If they have a vote saying that, then the people who is in that area who wish to be under Ukraine could find ways to, shift to Ukraine even more out of that area, and find a solution where it could be more peaceful in order to end the conflict, because it's not easy. I hear like some politicians and from different countries may say Russia should have stopped the war. It's not realistic for Russia to just stop the war. You can't just stop something like that as a war. The Russians have feelings too. They have people that are dying, who already died for this war and dying to their families are mourning. Ukrainian would not stop either because they have the same feelings too. They're losing a lot of family members, and it really, you know what I'm saying, it no war, you know what I'm saying, no war is good. The war in Yemen is not good either, you know, and all these other places in Africa, and I look at all them things as war could have been, what could have been prevented, just because sometimes of egos and some people own personal greed, cause you have power, so you could push that power into the narrative and to get your objective, to reach your objective, to get what you want. You know, we gotta stop that kind of lifestyle. So, um, back to the front of the war, what's going on right now. Let's talk about now what's going on across Bakhmut area. I will say now that the Russians capture Bakhmut, right, which is the Wagner. The Wagner group is really effective in that area. They had a problem. That's why I see they slow up the other day because the supply was get slowed down. According to information from sources and the net that I seen, right? And the head of the Wagner saying everything alright now because they get like the supplies that they need are coming in. But Ukraine are getting their supplies too. Somehow I don't know how they do it, but you gotta give the Ukrainian it too. Right? They brave, they fearless fighters, and they're defending the territories to the heart, and they ain't giving up. And with the support from the West, and we could know that too because we know that they have private military groups from various countries. You could tell from the patches that they wear and the shoulders and stuff like that. They're foreigners. The Ukrainians have a lot of those help, and some of these people are private, ex military fighters. So that's why it's getting rougher for the Russians because they're fighting a collective group of countries or people who already have experience of fighting in war. And they're getting some more good equipment from the US, like drones and stuff, so they could see the targets before they attack. The Russians using the same techniques too, so both countries are using pretty advanced techniques to in order to launch their offenses. And right now, we're expecting an offense from the Ukrainian, attack from them. Could Russia withstand that? I believe the Russians would observe it. They will lose a lot, and they will launch their own offensive too because they have a lot offensive attack to launch on the Ukrainians as well. But nobody know when it's gonna occur and where it's gonna occur from. Some people speculate it could happen from Belarus because they could come to Belarus, which is closer to Kiev. So the Ukrainians have to be careful of that. Ukraine have to be careful of that. I don't think so though because Belarus will be directly involved now, and if that happen now, then other countries might take part in, like Poland could invade Belarus and all them places too. So this war could spill over into a bigger conflict, and then it could lead to World War III, and that's what we don't want. Because Russia holding the world's largest nuclear arsenal according to sources, and I know that the US hold up the second most, I believe, according to sources. Um, do we want to mess with Russia in that way? Do we want to mess with the US? No, because now anyone push that nuclear button, button, and it's over for that country that get targeted, and not just that country. Countries that near to that country will be affected by the nuclear blast, and the radiation could affect people for years to come, and you will have like um, deformed babies and all them stuff for years to come, and you know, and all that. So let's get back to the war what's going on in Ukraine right now on the front lines. Zaporozhye area. Fighting is happening in that area too. Olega. Olega. Olega area is a lot of heavy fighting is happening there too. The equipments, a lot of heavy losses on equipments, armor vehicles for on the Ukrainian side. And the Russians are losing artillery, but not as much as Ukraine. Ukraine are losing HIMARS and armor trucks and tanks, even drones too. Russia are losing number of vehicles as well too in some offenses, but the Ukraine are playing a more defensive game, so they're more in the trenches right now. So that's why you're not having a lot of news and heavy losses on tanks and armor vehicles too much them days, because of the fighting was taking place now, especially in the Donbass area, and the the Bakhmut area is more buildings. Bakhmut area is more of a city with buildings, and outside of the city we have trenches. So it's just be more building to building fighting, and out in the field is trenches. And now that road from the north of that road that the Russians are like about 2 kilometers from right now, if they capture that road that shuts off Bakhmut main supply and only route out, then the encirclement will cause the Ukrainian to collapse in that area, and then it will give the Russians more space to advance further, you know, and it's a more open field area, so they could see clear what they're going forward to meet, and it's open ground, so Ukrainian don't have much covers there, and they seem to not be a lot of trenches in that area right now. So look like the Russians, if they get to capture Bakhmut, then the rest of the walk will be a little bit more easier in the north. That's of Bakhmut, and to the south, way down to the south, Zaporozhye area, wherever I pronounce it, the name right. Apologize if I get it wrong. Someone could always correct me. That area now, I think that some Russians are down there, but not as much as in Bakhmut. Because Bakhmut is where we have the heavy fighting, heavy clashes. You could tell from the icons and the videos, and you could where the heavy clashes are happening. So let me get some more information and let you know. Not sure if you will be able to hear the TV. I'm watching it, on the television, so I could get some more intel on it to memorize the names of the places in Ukraine, and to let you know from the sources what I'm using right now is again military summary. Check them out. I believe it's a reliable source of what's going on still on the front lines. So let me dig in again to some more intel on what's going on. This one was recently updated about 6 hours ago. So this is what's happening right now.
And Ukraine use these days is not enough to establish 100% supply and to cover 100% needs of Ukrainians. So that's why they need to increase the level and the number of roads. And if you take a look at Transnistria, you're going to see that there is at least one railroad that goes through this country. Furthermore, there are at least a lot of local big roads that the Ukrainians, and also another railroad. So there are at least 2 or 3 railroads that goes through Transnistria that Ukrainians can use to supply and support themselves through Moldova and Romania. And this is very important because now the Ukrainians need to make some kind of hook. And of course, it's some kind of, it caused some kind of logistic problems and so on.
Well, now I believe that the Ukrainians secret right now. I mean, put it out there. So if it do happen, then I could be the first one to really talk about it. Maybe one of the first. I believe that the Ukrainian offense is gonna launch more in the south. That area where they're gonna come from is like more to Crimea, because now if they launch one big offensive, they wanna reach all the way back up to Crimea. Don't know if they're gonna cross over into Crimea, but they wanna push in that area in order to gain back some leverage in the news to, and to give the soldiers some encouragement, like they're pushing back to at the at the Russians, and gaining back positions and stuff like that. Cause they're facing a lot, they're losing a lot of grounds, right now. The Russians are just capturing towns after towns, so that's my belief. So look out Crimea. And for the Russian offense that they planning to launch, I believe that the Russian offense is gonna be hitting from the south as well, because for them to come all the way from the north, the Kiev are very fortified. So if they have to go to Kiev, around them area, they will face a lot of heavy losses, because they have a lot of defense system set up and radars and stuff. So drones and snipers and anything to throw at the Russians, and that would be the last place for the Russians to go, where Ukraine know, well, okay, then if they come here, the Russian army is gonna override us, because they're gonna be the last spot. So they could come from the south and come all the way up, right? And we see things are heating up with Moldova in the south. They have troops around there, so I don't know if Moldova is supporting Ukraine. So let's say Moldova join into the war with Ukraine to help them defeat Russia. Then Russia could invade Moldova, and it's a smaller place, way smaller, which would be easier for the Russians. And not sure if that would cause escalation. So the whole thing is I'm trying to avoid now the Russia and NATO clashing, and we know how that gonna end up. That's not a big. We don't want to think about how that gonna end, because many things we'll have to talk about concerning how that going to end. So therefore now, I advise now President Zelensky to try to come on the table and negotiate with the Russians and try to end this war. It's not just like how a lot of these folks are saying Russia need to stop end the war. Russia can't end the war without Ukraine coming to agreement with them. So both of them need to end the war. How can they end the war? We need encouragement from the West to encourage, and the EU to encourage Ukraine to go to the table. And I sure China and India is encouraging Russia to go to the table, and we've been hearing that echoing for a while now. Nobody really want this war. It's causing inflation in many different countries. Or my country here too, we're facing inflation, high prices and things due to the high price of gas. Gas, anytime gas raise, everything raise. Transportation number one. So I'm gonna end the video here. Don't wanna drag it out too long. So like I said, peace reign, and let's try to find an end to the conflict. Until we meet again, stay safe.